They have a combined 12 years in the National Football League. They combined for 65 career sacks, 232 tackles, 1 Pro Bowl selection, and 1 Employee of the Month award.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
It's Train and Grose on the All AZ Podcast Network.
Welcome in episode 92, Train and Grose, B-Train, Birch and Berry, Mike Grose, Sean Crespin. Happy 2023 to you. Thanks for tuning in. And you know we start every podcast when we do the number, talk about the player that wore the number of our podcast.
That's right.
So 92 is the number, and the best I could come up with is
Reggie White.
Dan Williams.
There's no other answer.
Dan Williams.
No, B-Train got it right. There is no other answer. That
Michael
man,
Strahan is an honorable mention.
the honorable mention, and that's right.
That's the list.
That's the list.
That's the list.
But there is no other. It's Reggie White.
Yeah.
That's it. It's the minister. That's it. Done. End of conversation.
I was just trying to recycle a joke that worked for me in the past. That's all I was trying to do.
And I know
I wasn't trying to argue.
And it's not great radio when it's just like, okay, well, this is an obvious
Competitive
answer,
agreement.
Right? Yeah. But it is. I mean, Reggie White is Reggie White.
That's the list.
That's
the
it.
list. That's it.
I don't get Dan Williams at all.
No.
Okay, as a man who played his position, favorite move of his. Watching him, it was just incredible.
Of Reggie White?
Reggie.
Oh, the hump.
The hump. It just boom. There they go,
It's
man.
the hump. I
He
mean,
got you on that hip. You were done.
Grown men knew it was coming, and they still couldn't stop it.
That's true.
And he actually he was a minister, but he still talked the most trash out of anybody I've ever heard.
Really?
He talked more trash in the nicest way you could ever imagine.
I could see that.
Preacher man coming. What you gonna do?
That's the
He
best.
coming. He be in his stance with the hand like this right here. You knew it was coming. He's still gonna
Couldn't
give
do
it to
nothing
you.
about it.
I'm just honored. I shared the field with him a couple times. That him and Barry Sanders are two guys I can just say I was on the field with those guys.
Right.
They were that impactful to me and really to all football fans. Like, Reggie White, Barry Sanders.
Well, and I think we talked about it at one time. Like, you tackled Barry Sanders.
2
and that's
tackles.
Career highlight.
Those are my career highlights.
Why are you shortchanging
2 tackles.
2?
What?
2 of them in the same game.
Same game.
That he went for 2 bills. I guess that's 2. By the way.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that part.
Oh, yeah.
I heard about the 2 tackles a lot, but I didn't hear about the 2.
Oh, he gave us a hot 2-piece.
Oh,
with
man.
no fries.
So you tackled him twice and saw his back a lot.
Yeah, I saw a whole lot of his back.
There he goes.
Yeah. Saw a lot of Sanders.
Damn, he did it again. Now, obviously, you're playing in the NFL, but can you appreciate that in the moment? Or
Absolutely.
in the moment you appreciate it. After the fact, clearly you do.
Mike, there are some guys that you just watch and they're just different. Barry Sanders, Reggie White, Deion Sanders, they were just different. When you saw them play, you just knew you were on the field with a great player. You knew that there was just greatness oozing out of those guys. Right. Even Tom Brady. I got to give it up to Tom Brady. Tom Brady was a guy you knew. When I first played against him in his first year as a starter, I didn't see the greatness. But by the time I got here in 2004 and he had won 3 Super Bowls about to win, or 2 Super Bowls about to win his 3rd, you knew there was something special about Tom Brady. And he was as cool a guy as you could imagine under pressure. Like, he did not let the moment ever get too big for him.
Right.
He was money.
Would you say that's
time.
the biggest difference from the first time you played against him until that time, or just the way he carried himself, his composure? I mean, what was it?
I think the fact that he had 2 shiny pieces on.
You say he had rings on, but
he had 2 rings.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he was able to go and do it, like the year we played, the year they won the Super Bowl, the first one, in 9/11, he did not have the confidence yet.
Well, he knew he shouldn't have been there because he had fumbled a couple weeks before that.
Well, no, I'm saying we played him in the regular season and we beat him in the regular season.
Gotcha.
And so we had a lot of success against the Patriots that year and the following year. We knew we could beat those guys, but he was a guy that was definitely on the rise, and all he needed was the reps to validate what he had already accomplished.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I needed to ask you, now that we didn't let me use my Dan Williams joke again, fan mail. J.J. Watt's retiring, and he got a weird piece of mail today.
Yeah.
Somebody sent him
badger.
a stuffed stuffed, a taxidermy. It wasn't
Oh,
dead.
when you said stuffed badger, I thought like stuffed animal, like with teddy bears.
No, it was like a real.
Oh, that's
real badger.
awful. Are you serious?
And they had it upside down, so it was in the
in the box. Yeah, look at the
awful.
JJ Watt
What?
on Twitter at JJ Watt.
All right, so
what else would it
finish
be?
your
But
question.
it was.
Sorry.
What's the weirdest piece of fan mail you ever, like either you personally or remember seeing in the locker room from a fan?
I think the weirdest I ever got was probably underwear to sign. Yeah. I got underwear to sign. I didn't tell anybody about that one, but
Did you sign it?
No, I did not sign it, and I did not return it. Did not keep the address either, for the record. It you know, you
For the record.
you get it all, but you don't respond to it all. We'll leave that right there.
The thought process of dropping a pair of underwear in the mail.
Yeah.
Let's see if I send enough of this out, see if anybody replies. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Although I will tell you this, I think I've mentioned before, I used to work at the facility where the Denver Nuggets had training camp.
Oh, yeah.
Before security was what it is now. Like you can't walk in on an NBA.
Mr. Alex English.
Back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And the fans that used to roll into the gym when the Nuggets were practicing. Yeah. So
Talk about the Mile High Club.
yeah, exactly. So that story surprises me a little bit, but
Not really.
But it really doesn't.
No.
All right, switching over to the news around the National Football League, and this week it has to be Damar Hamlin. I'm actually we're doing this on a Friday. We very rarely record on a Friday, but just the way our schedules fell.
Yep.
And this is the Friday after the Monday night game where they suspended play, ultimately canceled the game because of the injury to Damar Hamlin on the field. And I was talking with you guys beforehand. I'm glad we're doing this story on Friday because the news is good.
That's right.
The news is good. It's still, something we need to talk about and get out there. But he is now communicating, FaceTiming with his teammates. Got the breathing tubes out.
Yep.
Apparently, there's some lung damage that he's going to have to deal with, but he is fine. And neurologically, it looks like he's in good shape. The first question he asked the doctors after regaining consciousness, he wrote it down. Did we win? So, I mean,
Typical athlete.
If that's the first question, he's firing on all cylinders that way.
That's right.
And that was the sign that it was going to be good. But still a scary, scary situation on the field. And it unfolded. And it was like once the injury happened, it was almost all in slow motion.
Correct.
Watching it unfold and really captured the attention of the sporting world, but beyond.
And big shout out to the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals training staff who were so quick to respond, and the assistant trainer for the Buffalo Bills who applied CPR to him in the moment to be ready to do what he needed to do to save his life, Mike, because without that he would not be here, literally. And for all those people who think that going through those different drills sometimes can be tedious and monotonous, you don't always feel like it, you got better things to do. Well, that was a direct result of a man's life being saved. So to all those people who have to go through fire drills and have to go through CPR training for whatever job that they have to do, you never know. And we saw it play out on a national stage, Mike. I don't ever remember being that scared for another individual. And Mike, I've seen a lot of football in my time. I've seen some horrific injuries, and I've witnessed some things that I wish I could never see again. But to see those men on the field, those Buffalo Bills players, react the way that they did, you knew it was something serious. They didn't have all the information to give to the public at the time, but you didn't need the information. All you had to do was see the faces of his teammates, his coaches, and the training staff to know how serious that situation really was.
When you get used to it, again, as Sean alluded to a moment ago, he and I as fans, you as a man who played on the field and saw things, you get used to seeing things in a certain way when it's an injury. Like I can't watch, and I don't like when TV shows the replay over and over again, like, ooh, look at the way that knee bent or something like that. I don't need to see that, right? But when a guy goes down and it's a bad knee injury, whatever, right? And it's unfortunate, and you hope his career is okay, but it's not life-threatening.
Correct.
But you get used to it. Like when a guy stays down on the field, you're like, oh, that's an injury, whatever it happens to be. the fact that like he got hit, then bounced up, and then went down.
Yeah.
You know, that was the scary part. That was when you're like, this is different. This is not a knee. This is not an ankle. This is something scary because he bounced up.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I can't. You know, a week later, I can hardly describe it. And you know, being in the moment there, whether you're broadcasting the game or heaven forbid you're a player near that, watching that happen, man.
It's the worst of the worst, Mike.
It is so bad.
Mike, we know we sign up for a game that is inherently dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that at any point we could be put in harm's way because of the sport we chose. But when you have that type of situation, nobody was prepared for that.
Yeah.
Nobody is prepared to see a man lifeless on the field who just a few seconds before was in the middle of the game making a tackle, and then all of a sudden he's fighting for his life. Yeah. That's something that you understand, that when you sign up for this game that there's going to be injuries. There's going to be times where you don't feel your best, and we know that that's part of the game, and you're okay with that.
Yep.
You reconcile it in your mind early on, and from then on you just say, hey, I'm going to put myself in the best position possible not to be one of those people. But when you actually see a worst case scenario play out, Mike, there's nothing that can prepare you for that. And those men exhibited exactly that. I mean, they were beside themselves. I've never seen grown men in uniforms cry and show the emotion that we saw on Monday night.
And the other thing, too, and obviously the central figure is Damar Hamlin, his health and his well-being. But if you freeze that story in the moment and look at all the kind of the side stories, if that's the right word for it, T. Higgins and the impact that him – and he
would not leave the hospital, Mike.
Would not leave the hospital.
The guilt that he's feeling, Mike.
Mothers. T. Higgins, the first person he found coming out of the locker room was his mother. They stopped the ambulance on the way out of the stadium so Damar Hamlin's mother could be in the ambulance with him. So the importance of mothers in these stories. And the fact that Damar Hamlin's mother reached out to T. Higgins after the fact. You know, stories like that. You mentioned the trainer and what he did. I heard an interview this week with a former team doctor of the Ravens, and for the life of me I can't remember his name. And he said that it's one of the things you do that you think you'll never have to use, but they practice that. They practice it just like the players practice it, and they do it several times a year. They have a drill for that exact scenario, and they have stopwatches. They are recorded, and they're like, do this better next time, do this different next time, roll him this way, whatever it is, and they are graded and evaluated so that, again, they don't ever think they're going to have to do it, but for when nights that happen in Cincinnati happen, that they can be as ready and prepared and effective as they possibly can be.
Mike, it's eerie to think, and a lot of people have said this on various broadcasts, that had he been anywhere else other than a hospital or a stadium, he would not be here.
No.
It's that simple. And the fact that trainer, that assistant trainer for the Buffalo Bills, I wish I could remember his name right now, but the fact that he was ready for the moment because of the training that he had prepared or he had done to prepare for that moment actually came to fruition. And if you're Damar Hamlin, how do you thank him enough?
Yeah.
I mean, he did his job, and I'm sure he's not going to feel like a hero, but my gosh, without him, Damar Hamlin is not currently with us. And I think for most fans, they don't understand how close that really was to becoming a real reality.
Denny Kellington is his name, the assistant trainer for the Buffalo Bills.
Big shout out to him. His name should be one that we talk about for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the good news is he's
alive and well.
He's turned the corner. He's alive and well, communicate with his teammates.
Said he flexed for his teammates too, when he did the Zoom.
That is crazy.
That's awesome. Or FaceTime, or Zoom or FaceTime, whichever one.
Whatever it was.
Yeah, he was flexing for him. So,
and I can't imagine if, to your point, and you're 100% spot on in terms of the description of the Bills and the Bengals players on the field. And and then a lot of the players wanted to stay over in Cincinnati and have go see him in the hospital. And they're like, no, you can't do that. He's like sedated. He's in the ICU. But then to get that call, to be able to see him after the last time you actually saw him was on a field going into an ambulance, then to have that Zoom or FaceTime call, whatever it is with him, the relief and the happiness. If you're crying tears on the field, it had to be tears of joy after the fact. And I would imagine, provide a huge measure of relief for that team because let's face it, there's football to be played. We didn't talk about it this week.
2 days. Or tomorrow. Tomorrow there's going to be games
we're recording
played.
now on a Friday. There's games coming this weekend.
Yeah.
And I think the sense of relief around
the
both
NFL.
Those teams
the
and the NFL is got to be palpable.
Mike, nobody wants to have that on their watch. Nobody wants to have a player die in their sport on the field. Mm-hmm. We've seen it in soccer, which is horrible. But now to think that a game as popular as the NFL is here in the United States, to have that type of black mark on its resume, that would be a huge blow. To think that somebody unfortunately met their demise on the field of play in a nationally broadcasted game where it was the only game in town, so everybody was locked in on that. That was as bad as you could think, and for them to be able to get out of that and take the necessary measures to ensure that Damar Hamlin is still with us. I mean, I just think, one, I cried tears, and I feel a sense of relief. Yeah. And I don't have any knowledge of him or his family or anything like that. But the fact that I played the game and I consider him a brother, it hit me, Mike. I couldn't help but put myself in that situation. And I had people reach out to me and ask, like, man, I thought of you in that moment. I was like, I get it. At first I didn't get it, but now I get it. And to think about a guy that has been that instrumental in that giving of his time and resources and to be so well loved and respected in his community back in Pittsburgh, and for them to show the love that they showed him with his GoFundMe, which was well over $7 million.
It went over 8 today.
It went over 8. He asked originally for $2,500, Mike.
Yeah.
And now it's over $8 million.
Yeah.
To me, that's the thing that really comes out of this whole story, is that you saw people come together, which this country really needed it.
Yeah.
We needed something like this, unfortunately. And you hate that it had to come through tragedy, but the fact that Damar Hamlin is a reason that people who didn't have anything to do with football came together and prayed and had well wishes and really had the holiday spirit, if you will, and the loving spirit, if you will, the humanitarian spirit to think about him in these moments. I think it was exactly what we needed at the right time.
100% agree. So, fallout now, they did not and will not resume or complete that game. So
I don't care about the game.
No, I'm saying what the fallout is,
yes.
Right? And I give the NFL credit because the naysayers out there were thinking that they were going to go the negative way and figure this out, how to play 2 games this week, whatever. So they're playing the week 18, the last week of the regular season games as usual. The Bengals-Bills game goes as, I guess, technically a no contest. And what it means, and we were talking about this before we started recording, is there's the potential for AFC championship game to be played at a neutral site if it involves some combination. And we won't go into all this on a podcast. You can find it if you want it, and I'm sure they'll be talking about it a lot this weekend on the broadcast. But anything that involves some combination of Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cincinnati championship game will be played at a neutral site, which I think is the best possible outcome. And Sean made a good point. It doesn't need to go to someplace like L.A. or Las Vegas. Play it where it's close. Let the fans enjoy it. If it is Buffalo and Cincinnati, cut the difference and play it in Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Players don't like the idea of Cleveland in January. But
fans don't like the idea of Cleveland in January.
Well, they do, as opposed to hopping a flight from Buffalo to L.A., I guess. But
I don't think I'd mind that. I mean, I think I might be okay with
Vegas,
LA.
South Florida.
Yeah.
Go play. I offered Detroit as a native of Detroit. That stadium's never been used for a playoff game, so why not? Let's have a game there. Like, they let Buffalo come over with snow. Let's have a playoff game
crazy.
there. Do what we got to do. Yeah. But no. So I think that's the best possible outcome. And the other thing is, for us, getting 2 playoffs. Like, we're there. If you look at the standings, a lot of interesting stuff as it relates to the NFL, the postseason. We're finally getting there. Obviously, talking about Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati in the playoffs, that's not a huge story. The Jacksonville Jaguars.
How about them?
They washed that whole Urban Meyer experiment out. They're 8-8.
8-8.
They are getting ready to
already won.
win their division. They've already won.
They've already won.
Somebody took the over preseason on the Jacksonville wins, 6.5. Yours truly cashed that ticket a while ago.
I believe I had that too, Mike. I believe I had high hopes and aspirations for Jacksonville too, because when you look at it, but I'm going to give you credit first and foremost. The thing that the Jacksonville story brings to the light is coaching matters.
It does.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
Coaching matters, and belief in the guy that you picked as the number 1 overall pick, that matters too.
Well, I think that's a two-way street. If you look at Trevor Lawrence this year compared to Trevor Lawrence last year, that's true on both sides of the equation.
You needed Doug Peterson.
You needed Doug Peterson, but if you're Trevor Lawrence, he clearly had issues that we don't know about with whatever was going on there, because you could see it, right? Yeah. And that team is
you're a rookie trying to deal with all that dysfunction. It's hard enough.
That transition,
being a rookie in the NFL, and you got to deal with that dysfunction as well. I mean.
The other story, the worst coach to make the playoffs, the Chargers have qualified. Coach Staley couldn't call a timeout and ice his way out of the playoffs this year.
How about the New York Football Giants in the playoffs?
Yeah, let's give them some credit.
I was going to get to the NFC in a minute, but yeah, I got you. And then just real quickly before we get out of the AFC, games that matter. The NFL loves that. Games that matter. Last week of the year, they got a handful of 8-8 teams, and you'll get to watch those games and decide who's going. Could be New England, could be Miami, could be Pittsburgh. But 8-8 games that are going to put teams in the postseason.
Yeah, and Mike, I know we don't want to jump the gun and get to the NFC, but the thing that I don't like is how they made Detroit Green Bay a Sunday night game, because you want those teams that are all fighting for playoff scenarios to all play at the same time.
Yep.
Now, when you see the Seattle game, that's going to have a big bearing on what happens with Detroit, because if Seattle wins, I think that knocks out Detroit already. So you want those teams to all have to go out and play and earn it and not know what the other team is doing.
You know what it is? It's the Aaron Rodgers factor.
Well,
because if Green Bay has to win to get in, and then you get the draw, love them or hate them of Aaron Rodgers.
We've been there and done that. We've got Aaron Rodgers fatigue. I mean, for a guy who's won so many MVPs and only got one Super Bowl appearance and one championship to show for it, there's much to do about nothing.
I'd like to watch the Titans-Jags game, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that's win and get in, right?
I want to see the future. Excuse me.
That's win and get in.
I agree with B-Train on that. I agree with you, but I also agree with the point, like, you need to play those games at the same time.
At the same time.
Kick it off late Green Bay time. And Seattle, they play the Rams, I believe.
Make them play during the day.
No, I'm saying 4 p.m. Eastern kickoff time, which is late for Green Bay, especially this time of year, so you practically get a night game anyway.
Right.
And have that game simultaneously, when they show the players looking up at the scoreboard while they're in a timeout. I think that's the best. I actually do. The Giants are in the playoffs.
They are.
The gun.
Locked in at the 6th seed.
I think it's
cool.
What. The other thing, too, we talk about the Seahawks, the fact that this team is about ready to qualify for the postseason because they're going to beat the Rams.
Makes Russell Wilson look so bad.
It's so bad.
And I think you got to put more respect on Pete Carroll's name while you're at it. Like, to take this team that I think the over-under total, they were definitely last place, and I think it was 4 or 5 wins.
Mike.
And this team's 8-8. If they win 9 games, they go to the postseason.
Mike, not just Pete Carroll. How about Geno Smith?
Yeah, Geno needs to get a ton of credit.
All of them.
Put some respect
that whole
on
organization.
Geno. This man was a backup for 8 years?
Was written off.
To the backup to the backup.
It was written off.
They showed they had a great graphic of where he's been, and now to take this.
Well, how about the conversation before the year started? Oh, they can't roll with. They're going to roll with Geno. I mean, they need to go get Baker. They need to go get Jimmy. They need to go get this and that. No. It was Geno, and the man's leading them to the playoffs.
And he still has the quote of the year. They wrote me off, but I didn't write back. That's still the best.
That is pretty good.
That's the best quote.
That is pretty good.
All right,
awesome.
Teams that didn't make the playoffs. You got to put Denver on that list. Because Seattle's going to make the playoffs and they're going to pick top 5.
Yeah. And Russ, like B-Train was just saying,
and Russell Wilson.
How bad is that?
And they have to give their pick to Seattle.
Yeah,
that's the best part about it. Being a fan of a team that's in their division, that's the best part about it.
And the Lions, they're out there rooting. The Lions don't know what to do because they want that high Rams pick.
Yeah.
But they get so the Rams aren't getting a first rounder.
Mike, reluctantly, the one story that we didn't talk about that I'm not the biggest fan of this organization, but I got to say, if he's able to pull this off, this would be one of the cooler stories of the NFL. If the Pittsburgh Steelers figure out a way
Mike Tomlin
to get into the playoffs, or he figures out a way to win that game and still not have a losing season since he's taken over as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach, That's quite an accomplishment. That's 16 straight years.
Did you hear his story? Because they brought that up on the broadcast last week because they were playing Sunday night, right? And it was a boring game, so there was a lot of conversation going on. But they brought up the fact that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record in the NFL, and they said they asked him about that in their meeting, their prep meeting, and he said, "I've had losing seasons." He said, "When I was playing Pee Wee football, we won one game." He said we went to the pizza joint after that game, and we played another one bites the dust all night on that on that jukebox after winning that one game. I love it. I love Mike Tomlin,
and I like the fact that they're playing Cleveland and not Cincinnati or Baltimore this week. I gotta like his chances.
I like the chances, but I mean that's so impressive. Mike.
It's so impressive. And we talked about that before around what do you need in a coach? You need a guy like Mike Tomlin. Like business.
Yeah, Mike, they were dead and stinking at the beginning of the season. When TJ Watt went out with the torn pec, they were dead. They were dead in the water. There was no life in that organization at all for the 2022 season. And somehow, some way, this man was able to keep that ship afloat. And they've been able to not only ride the wave, but they've actually played really good football down the stretch. And are the Pittsburgh Steelers, dare I say, a team that you really don't want to see going into the playoffs?
Defensively, they're always going to be solid.
Always. Yeah.
But I'll give the quarterback, the young quarterback there's growing right before our eyes.
Well,
first rookie ever to have back-to-back games with a game-winning touchdown pass in the fourth quarter.
And it goes back to the difference between a solid organization with a respectable coaching staff
They know
and
what
what happened in Jacksonville a year ago.
They know what they're doing.
Right? And real quickly before we pivot to the local team, and I'm not picking on you, but have we ever seen anything like what happened with the Raiders? Just
which part?
The Derek Carr part.
No.
We like to pick on the Raiders because of you.
That's bizarre.
But this has nothing to do with it. This is absolutely bizarre.
Can I go off on this for a little bit? Because this one drives me nuts. You guys
take it away.
I'm a Carr fan, and I think they're making a mistake. So, but this is all money driven. So they wrote in a part of his contract is if he can't pass his end of the year physical this year, $40 million in guarantees gets triggered. So what do they say? As soon as you're basically done for the year and Carr's not getting it done in the McDaniels offense, we don't even want you at the facility. Go. But they can't say that because that's against the CBA, right? But they don't even want him lifting weights at the facility. Nothing. We're not paying you $40 million if you get hurt. All right. Now where it really gets weird, February 15th, those same guarantees kick in. $40 million on February 15th. The new league year starts when, B-Trey?
That would be
mid-March.
Mid-March, yeah.
Mid-March. So how are you expected to make a trade February 15th if everybody in the league who might be interested in Derek Carr knows damn well you got to cut him because you're not cutting him a $40 million check, and you got to do it before February 15th, a couple weeks after the Super Bowl? This is going to get really, really weird, even more so than it already is. Yeah. To be honest.
How ironic that is the day after Valentine's Day.
Right?
Where's the love?
Yeah, where's the love? Yeah, not there anymore. I'll tell you this, though. This is where I think Emmanuel Acho had a similar take. He had a similar take. So you're talking about a guy who's a career near 70% completions, has had to go through 5 coaching changes and never had an issue picking up that offense and falling right into place and still putting up 4,000 yards and 25 touchdowns and the whole deal.
Almost an MVP one year.
Almost an MVP one year. All of a sudden... Oh, by the way, has the most fourth quarter comebacks of any player since 2014 when he came in the league. Wow. All of a sudden, that 70% completion guy who never had a problem with picking up any other offense he's had to learn, 5 of them, by the way, struggles to pick up the offense, is down near 60% completions, struggles in late game situations. Now, I've always been a sample size guy. Sample size tells me the quarterback's not the problem.
He's not.
So what's the problem?
Problem is the head coach that you can't fire. You just hired him.
Exactly right. And so you're stuck with them, and this is where it's going. And I got to be honest, it is time for both parties to have a fresh start somewhere. It is. It's time for this to happen. But I hate the fact that people are trying to say that this is the quarterback's fault. It's not.
No.
It's. I'll tell you right now, it is not.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but in that clip you mentioned with Emmanuel Acho, he went and he said he listed all in the recent past the failures of the front office. He goes, "That's not Derek Carr.
No,
that's not Derek Carr. That's not Derek Carr."
Since 2014, the Raiders defense ranks 32nd. 30. That's dead last for those of you scoring at home in every major defensive statistical category since 2014. He's never had a defense rank higher than 20th. And that was the year when they were on their way to the Super Bowl in 2016 before he broke his ankle, right? So never had a defense ranked higher than 20th. How do you expect a guy to win a bunch of games? Not to mention 5 different offenses he had to learn, 5 different play callers, 5 different head coaches, teammates who are getting in, fatal car accidents. And, the whole thing is a mess. It's unfortunate that it ends that way, but both parties do need a fresh start. That's for sure.
I can't think of another coach who has worn out his welcome any faster.
In two places.
Both in the AFC West, by the way. Like, he has not figured out how to excel in that division.
They've blown 5 10-point or larger second-half leads this year. No other team has ever done 4 in a season. They've blown 5 double-digit second-half leads this year. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And guess when it happened again? Oh, the game after you got rid of that quarterback whose fault it was, you blew another 10-point second-half lead. So clearly, it was the quarterback's fault.
Oh, by the way, it's just bizarre.
Sorry for the tangent.
No.
Yeah.
Like I said, we like to pick on you where appropriate, but just a bizarre.
It's odd. It really is. And now they're talking about bringing in a 46-year-old Tom Brady next year. A lot of people are trying to connect those dots. Why in the world would you do that?
But what's the infatuation with old Patriot quarterbacks? I mean, now you're going with Jarrett Stidham.
But, right.
What are we talking about?
I'll give him credit, though. As much as I, had my guy Carr's back in that one, I like Stidham's game. He was a tough SOB last weekend. He threw 2 interceptions and one of them ended the game. But
tough doesn't mean successful.
Tough son of a bitch. No, I don't. He's not the future. He's not the quarterback of the future there. But I'll give him credit, man. He tried to get everything he could out of his audition.
Tom Brady come in and break some of George Blanda's
records. To answer your question though, the dots there are getting connected just because of the Josh McDaniels. Tom Brady familiarity.
Real quickly before we end this segment, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it because we got the whole offseason. How quickly at the conclusion of Sunday's game for the Cardinals at the 49ers do they fire Cliff? Like, is it a la Ray Anderson meeting
in the end zone
in the end zone, shaking his hand, and does Cliff fly home on the team plane?
I don't know if it happens.
I mean, could it be with a Lane Kiffin on the tarmac?
Right.
I mean,
you don't fly home.
I remember that year I saw somebody had spray painted the last name Kiffin on a street after a fire lane. So It said Fire Lane.
Fire Lane Kiffin.
Wow.
I like it.
Wow.
It was good.
Wow.
You don't think it happens?
I don't know. It's financially. I just don't know.
You just paid him.
Yeah. And it's all guaranteed cash, man.
Guaranteed. Like, you paid the coach, the GM, and the player.
Absolutely. And I get all that. And we've got a whole off season to dive into this, and it'll happen or it won't.
Yeah.
Head first.
But if you're Michael Bidwell, and I think I said this to you guys, if you're Michael Bidwell, you love him, you hate him, whatever you think about Michael Bidwell, you have to give him credit for what got built in Glendale. Physically got built in Glendale, as well as the atmosphere in Glendale. You know it. You and I, we were in the stadium. We saw it. That's gone. I mean, the building is still there, but everything else is gone.
What where are they at right now? Is it a 6-game losing streak right now?
They are 1-14 in their last 15.
In the home games, I knew that. But I just mean in overall this year right now. What are they riding right now? 6-game losing streak?
I think it is 6. I believe it is, yeah.
I mean, how do you excuse that regardless of what's happened?
Regardless of what happened. But bigger than that, like I understand that what is happening to this franchise costing them?
Yeah.
What is that costing? Like it is if I'm him, you're embarrassed. You have to be embarrassed. If you're a season ticket holder, you would much rather sell your tickets. And that's always the case in Arizona. I understand that, and not just with the Cardinals, but it is at an epidemic proportion. So whatever the cost of that is, you got to eat it. You got to eat it, and you got to give this fan base something to latch on to.
But Mike, the thing that keeps playing in my head is we talked about this when he was hired in the first place. Like, why this guy? Why now? Then you double down and give him a contract extension,
and you give him effusive praise in the media in March. We read the comments. I know people that have had season tickets all the way back to Sun Devil Stadium that did not go after the month of September this year. Just didn't go.
Wow.
Did not go and won't go. One guy said, I'm not going to renew.
1-14.
I mean, there hasn't been a win. Why would you go when you hadn't seen a win? You're not going to see a win when you go to State Farm Stadium right now. 1-15 or 1-14? 14 in the last 15
it's
games.
It's 1 and something. It's
crazy.
It's bad. It's so bad.
Anytime you got teenage numbers with 1 in front of it, it's not good.
And like I said, this is all Michael Bidwell. One way or another, this is Michael Bidwell. And whatever else you say about him, because I know people don't like him, whatever, people feel a certain way. I've never heard anybody say he's not a smart guy. Like, he makes decisions you might not agree with. But
what does that say, though? If you're smart but you keep doing things that are not smart?
I don't know. That's a good point. We'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. On the other side, we'll get into college football a little bit. That's coming up on Train and Grose.
Yeah.
Train and Grose.
This is the segment that I'll sit out. The national championship game coming up Monday. We're recording this on a Friday. TCU and Georgia. I will say this: if I wasn't a Michigan fan,
that's hard. That's a hard if.
Oh, that's a hard if. Thank you very much. Those were 2 damn good games on the 31st.
For all the wrong reasons. For all the wrong reasons.
Entertaining.
What do you mean?
Defense optional.
Yeah. You ain't lying. And what is
as a defensive guy? I do not feel.
Do you got to blitz every third down? The hell are you doing, Michigan?
Let me go all the way back to we didn't talk about this. I went into hiding and we didn't talk about it. And people rightly want to make a case about that touchdown that was not called a touchdown. That's fine.
Don't fumble.
That's fine. They should have scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
I knew we were in trouble. I played. I knew the Michigan was in trouble, and I don't know what the hell was in like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Michigan has it 4th down and goal, and they call it double reverse. Jim frickin' Harbaugh with the best offense of line in college football. 4th and goal in the red zone. You're calling a double reverse that TCU sniffed out. And that propelled TCU, I think. That you saw them just get so charged up after that stop that I think that's where Michigan lost the game. In addition to that, and by the way, you got the best place kicker in the history of your program. So worst case, you could have just gone for 3 if you didn't want to do the Cliff Kingsbury nonsense.
Yeah. Hey, if you're a play caller, can you take the Philly special and just rip it out of your playbook now and just get rid of it, please?
2 pick sixes.
Yep.
So I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but 2 pick sixes, that's 14 points. That's 17 points. And then the fumble after the bad call. So assuming, again, you got it first in inches and you fumble it away. So that's 24 points.
Yeah, Mike, you and my son went into hiding because, it was not good to be a Michigan fan. And it only got worse this week when all of the speculation about the violations about Harbaugh. I mean, yeah, all of a sudden, is he gone? Does he coach in 2023 at Michigan?
Yeah, he'll be back.
Oh, hey,
you think so?
Hold up on those.
We'll hold up on that. I get it.
That might be a
conversation. I thought you were going to the NCAA investigation.
I sure was.
So it's funny.
Turns out somebody else also bringing players on campus.
Right. I think it's funny because in the story that I was reading that Michigan's going to be served with notice of whatever they call it, intent from the NCAA, and they expect a quick resolution to the case. I started laughing.
Yeah, if you get a quick resolution, I'm going to I
started laughing because apparently these don't get resolved. Hey, I say the same thing about.
It's like what did I send you a text? One of the Sun Devils defensive linemen wound up.
Well, that's not what he got in trouble for.
No, I'm just saying. But I sent you. Remember, it was the transfer period, the opening for transfers, right? And ASU defensive lineman at 10 a.m. On the day you're allowed to talk to each other is taking a picture with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan.
There you go.
But clearly they didn't have conversations before that.
I will say the same thing about Jim Harbaugh that I said about Herm. If he's guilty of whatever they say he's guilty of, you got to pay the price. I mean, you can't say, you want all these rules and then don't follow the rules. So whatever that is, you're telling me that type of violation is a mere slap on the wrist. So
but
that's
expedite
fine.
it. Well,
and then the other thing is they had a defensive analyst on the sideline. So, that's the other problem with the NCAA is you need to have somebody that understands the rule book and then follow the damn rules. But whatever they do. But I think he's coaching at Michigan this year. Whether or not he gets a suspension or whatever they're talking about, I don't know. But, he had his chance with Carolina.
No, he's got real offers on the table, man.
Well, I know he does, but he put out his statement saying he expects to coach at Michigan. So,
well, he's got to say that. But I mean, remember last year he was at Minnesota when they were doing the national letter of intent. So, I think he has great aspirations to go to the NFL, and I think, knowing him as well as I do, I think it still eats at him that they took half his salary the other year.
Yeah. I'm sure it does.
So
I'm sure it does.
I mean, and the fact that when you start talking about the NFL, there's a little more money involved. It's guaranteed.
Yeah.
And this is a guy that had a lot of success in the NFL his first time around with San Francisco 49ers. I think there's going to be an NFL team that takes a chance on him. Yeah. I really do.
And they may, and there's plenty of openings. So, we'll see. The nightcap on December 31st. That one surprised me more, not in terms of the results. Georgia ultimately won, but the best defensive team in the Final Four was Georgia. I think there's not much question about that.
Yeah, I mean,
and the fact that Ohio State ran it up and down the field on Georgia that way, that was the surprising part to me. Because you figure if there's one team that's going to hold defense wins championships, and that it was going to be them.
Yeah, it was basically, they held on for dear life. They got through by the hair of their chinny chin chin. Yeah. And if their Ohio State's kicker could figure out a way to, not shank the ball completely left, we're having a totally different conversation. Yeah. And I think for Georgia, their legacy is on the line because they went from a team that could have been the ultimate GOAT as far as, blowing an opportunity to make history. Now they have probably one of the easier paths, with all respect due to TCU. Nobody is giving TCU much of a chance against Georgia. But I think you got to put a little respect on TCU's name. Even though they didn't win their own conference, even though they lost to Kansas State in an untimely Big 12 championship game, they still seem like a team that has upset-minded thoughts all the time. And I think they have a puncher's chance of actually pulling this thing out.
And I think if you're Georgia and you look at what happened, particularly against Michigan, against TCU, don't give them a reason.
Oh.
Don't call double reverse or whatever. Don't give them a reason.
Don't
Stick
flinch.
to your game plan.
They flinched, Mike.
Yeah.
Coach Holtz used to always talk about don't flinch. There's always that moment in a game where the team that's inferior is going to flinch. And we saw in that moment where Michigan ran that double reverse on a 4th and 1, they flinched and they never recovered from it.
I mean, the blitzing. You're
early in the damn game.
You fight so hard to get back in the game. It's 3rd and 7. You got them backed up. You send the house when you didn't need to, and boom, there. I remember. I wish I could remember which defensive coordinator it was for ASU, but I remember at the coach's show he said, when we blitz the way we do, somebody's band is going to play. You got to make sure it's yours. And Michigan, unfortunately, didn't make sure it was theirs.
Strike up the band.
Somebody's going to be playing. When you blitz that much, when you send the house like that, somebody's band's going to be playing because something's going to happen.
Wow.
You better make sure it's yours.
Better make sure it's yours. All right, so Monday night championship game, Georgia and TCU.
They're a, 14-point favorite right
12
now?
and a half. I just looked it up. 12 and a half, yeah.
My gosh.
Double digit anyway.
Over, under 63.
Ooh.
Points total? I'm going to go over.
I'm going over, too.
I think so, too.
I'm definitely
going over. Like you just said, defense been optional this bowl season.
But I've been really disappointed in the defense because with Michigan and TCU, they hung their hats on defense.
Yeah.
And Georgia hung their hat on defense. So 3 of the 4 teams that were in the semifinal were thought to be defensive-minded teams, and it was like hot knife through butter. It really was. I mean, it was really the last team with the ball was going to win. And except for Ohio State, their kicker couldn't finish the deal. But I was a little disappointed. I mean, I know it was great theater. It was memorable, and there was lots of back and forth and drama. But as a defensive guy, you just want to see some semblance of defense. Like, play like you've been there before. Play like it means something to you. Don't just let the team go up and down the field. My gosh.
The other big story in the offseason for college football is the transfer portal. Like, this is the game
has changed forever.
This is getting crazy.
It's changed. It's never going back. You can't put this toothpaste back in the tube, Mike.
No.
It is done.
No.
You know who it hurts of the most, which is, and we talked about this I think once before, is how there's a lot of kids that go into the transfer portal. I think only 44% of them over the course of the last few years have actually found another D1 roster to play on. But the kids you coach, B-Train, all these kids coming up, kids coming out of high school, I think they're the most affected by the way this is all trending right now, transfer portal and so forth.
Well, we already see it in high schools here, not to get too far back, but you see kids play in 4 different high schools in 4 years. In high school.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. In Texas, you couldn't transfer. If you went to another school, you were done for the rest of your time.
Yeah.
There was no going to another school and playing. Here, it's open enrollment. You can go wherever you can get to. If you can get there, you can go there.
But if I'm a head coach and I can go into the transfer portal and recruit a kid who I've got college, probably D1 tape on,
right,
or get a kid out of high school, that my scholarship's probably going towards the kid I've seen, and I have an idea of what type of a college athlete he is.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing that more and more.
I think you need to be smart about it, though. Like, to B-Train's point, like, kids now, I think this was your point, kids now, if it doesn't go exactly the way they want to do it, they're like,
I'm out of here.
I'm leaving. So you want to have a kid, I would imagine, that can handle adversity, that can handle tough coaching, little feedback. I need you to be better here. I need you to be better there. Instead of taking that, you'd be like, well, screw you, coach. I'm transferring, where somebody will talk nice to me in practice type of thing. So I get what you're saying in some cases, but you got to do your homework. Like, why are these players in the transfer portal? Like, if their coach leaves and they go with their coach, fine, because I'm in favor of that. When you and I were doing the radio show, I said it. This is patently unfair. The coach can go from school A to school B and coach immediately. If a kid wants to transfer from school A to school B, he's got to petition the school that he's in for a release, and then he's got to sit out a year, 2 years if it's within the conference. Kids get screwed, coaches could move. So, to your point, though, the floodgates are wide open, and it's changed forever.
Mike, when you start talking about transfer portal, you also have to start thinking about, too, the 6-year seniors. Until those guys, because those guys are actually taking away scholarships from the incoming freshmen. Like, it's changing the way that teams are actually recruiting the high schoolers, because if you've got a guy that you still like and he's a 6-year guy, there's a guy that's actually going to be that he petitioned for a 9th year.
Yeah. Medical.
Ninth
year. Like, this dude is 26 years old, basically in college, still trying to play college football. Like, I got a chance to go pro. Like, what are you doing? You've been in school for 9 years. You went to school for twice.
Get a job, son.
Do something.
Yeah. So here's the thing you got to do. If you're the head coach at a college football program, you've got to have a kind of what they were talking about with ASU, setting it up like a pro team, like a personnel guy. Like, guys, you manage your roster internally. Like, hey, B-Train, sorry, man, it ain't working out. Can we help you find another place to play? Sean, you good? We want you to stay. What do we got to do to keep you here type of thing.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, like recruiting, legally, Sean, recruiting guys that are at other schools so that when they do hit the transfer portal, they're like, hey, defensive end at ASU, come to Michigan.
Yeah.
Right? To how do you do that? So that's going to be like a full-time job on these college staffs. They're managing their existing roster, which is crazy.
But, Mike, it becomes a win-now situation where you have coaches that are looking at it like, okay, I got this hotshot 4-star, 5-star recruit coming out of high school, or I got this 6-year senior, a guy that's a physically mature guy that really can help you right now more than the 5-star can because of his physical stature and his ability to go play and his familiarity with college.
Yeah.
Now you're having to make choices between a 23-year-old or a highly touted 17-year-old. Which do you go with if your job is on the line?
No, 100%. It's kind of like adding that in with the JUCO argument. Like, the old argument was you can't build your program with JUCO players. Like, you go in and you're like, I'll go get 1 or 2 here to stopgap, but you got to have guys in your program for 4 years. Yeah. I think that argument's going out the window.
Oh, look, Mike, if you're a 5th-year senior and you go to another school, you spent 4 years at one school and you've had 4 years to hone your craft, and then you get the most polished version of that particular player for a year, maybe 2, depending on – and when does that COVID situation, when does that rule run out? Does that run out this year?
I think it's anybody who was on a roster at that time has that extra year.
Oh, my God.
So you got a couple more years of that.
That's 4 years minimum, right?
2024.
5 if you talk about red shirts and
you
whatnot.
got a couple more years of that. And it's hard, too. I happen to know somebody who coaches at the intercollegiate level, and she was telling me that's an added thing that they do with the compliance. Like, if they're bringing a kid in, like, transfers happen at every level, and where's the COVID year? They mark the COVID year so they know if they got that to work with. It's
crazy, Mike.
Crazy.
Because now you're not even dealing with kids. You're dealing with young men. I mean, if you're 23, 24 years old, you're not a kid anymore. You're a grown man. It's crazy. I don't understand it. I mean, college sports has changed so drastically, and I'm not going to put it all on NIL and all that kind of stuff. Transfer portal had their place or their culpability in this as well. there's a lot of different moving parts to this. There's a lot of different things that made college athletics what it is today, and I'm not sure I really love it.
Yeah, and you and I, we on a previous podcast, we were joking about that, where the guy goes on Instagram, where he thanks everybody, but he ends it with, that being said, you're either going to the NFL or you're taking your talents on the road.
Somewhere else, yeah.
So your alma mater made news this week with they land a quarterback from Wake Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Sam Hartman,
he's pretty good. He's already thrown for 12,000 yards in his college career, Mark. He's a pretty well-known commodity.
Yeah.
So, you're just plugging and playing, and I think, for Coach Freeman, look, it's great to be able to transition, but at some point you are going to have to go back to the old-fashioned way of building a program. You're going to have to start with the young guys, train them up, coach them up, and then hopefully they materialize all together at the same time to be a team that can actually do something.
There you go. All right, that's going to do it for the college football look. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter at Training Grose. It's just that easy.
Easy enough.
On the other side, I see the crack research staff frantically putting the finishing touches on what we like to call pump the brakes. That plus a dad joke. And don't forget, I just said Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Typically, we put a picture of the shirt that B-Train's wearing. This one's very appropriate.
Absolutely.
I love it. So we'll do all that coming up next on Training Grose. 2 things I got to watch.
Well, now we're good.
Welcome in. Regular listeners to the podcast know what the music means. It's time for Pump the Brakes.
Yeah.
Where Sean Crespin comes in and grills us over very important topics.
Yes,
That's right.
very important.
That's right.
The
Pop
world of
culture?
sports, little pop culture always in there.
You got any polls?
No polls.
Damn
No
it.
polls, but a pop culture
Gotta find a poll every
story.
week.
I saw a story, a real life story that made me laugh, and we'll get
All
there.
right. Well,
We'll get there.
All right.
Bleacher Report. They rank the best open/expected to be open coaching jobs in the National Football League. And their top 4 are the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Colts, and the Broncos. But they're in that order. Cardinals 4, Panthers 3, Colts 2, Broncos 1. So pump the brakes or not. The Panthers and Colts are a better coaching job than the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, I'm not pumping the brakes. I think there are better situations when you think of the quarterback position and where they are. You think about the general manager position where they are. As far as the Cardinals are concerned, that's up in the air. Quarterback, who is going to quarterback this team the first 2 months of the season, because Kyler Murray is not going to be available to, at best, Halloween, probably November. When you hurt your knee that late in the game, it's going to be 9 months. So you start doing the math, that's around October, late September, early October. So really about Halloween, and then you're going to be careful with bringing him back. You're not going to just bring him back as soon as he's cleared medically. You're going to give him some time. So who is going to be this team's quarterback, and what is this team going to look like? No J.J. Watt on defense. Who's going to be the defensive catalyst other than Buda Baker?
Hopkins talking about potentially wanting out of this place.
I mean, why would you want to stay if you're DeAndre Hopkins?
100% agree. And thought Carolina, Steve Wilkes should get that job.
I totally agree.
Absolutely should get
But
that
that
job.
wasn't the question. But
Players are backing him too.
Just
Players
throw that out there for
Players are going
consideration.
public saying, "We want him. He's earned it. We want him to be our coach."
And I also
How about that? Still egg on the face here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also disagree with the fact that the Broncos is the best opening in the NFL, but we'll get into that later. Look, this is a tough spot, right? And we talked about the salary cap. The quarterback's coming off the knee injury, but you can't move off him because of the cap. Like, is it a good idea to fire the coach, the general manager? We talked about that. And they talked about the fact they got brand new contracts, but there's no salary cap implications. The owner has to make a decision, eat that money, but it doesn't impact the product on the field. You're stuck with that quarterback. So you got to find a coach that thinks he can work with that quarterback. And that, I think, is the tough thing, because he's a lot to deal with. He's a lot to deal with.
Yes.
He's a lot to deal with, and you're stuck with him.
Yes.
You are absolutely
for better or
stuck
for
with
worse.
him.
All right, very quickly, why is Denver not the top job?
Why is it?
It's I could give you a handful of reasons. New ownership, I think, willing to spend. I think you have stability there. It's not like it's a train wreck in the front office there. I still think there's...
This is not the Denver Broncos
Listen, I still think there's football left in Russell Wilson. I think that was just a terrible situation from start to finish there. Hackett was
but
not...
whose fault was
it? You're right. It's front office going down. But that roster, I'm telling you, I've been saying this for a long time, and I thought Russell Wilson was going to be what got that roster over the hump. There's a lot of talent there.
There is a lot of talent there, and you know this better than anybody.
It's a great
you played
sports
there.
town.
It's a great sports town. The Broncos have missed the playoffs for 5 years in a row. Hackett's only been the coach one of those
So
years.
Expectations are low, you know?
No, the expectations are never low in Denver.
That's a great job.
They are never low in Denver. It's a great job. It's a great city. It's a great organization. But there's something rotten in that organization right now that, you know, if they would have been a playoff team and Hackett came in and drove the bus off the cliff,
yeah,
I would buy that. But there's something going on in Denver that's not right. I mean, all the other things you said, it's a great city, it's a great job, it's a great organization, was a great organization. No.
Did they sell their soul for that Super Bowl in 2015?
Yeah, they did. Come on, you won the Peyton Manning sweepstakes.
So Peyton Manning sweepstakes. Remember, there were some other veterans that they brought in.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Lawrence or DeMarcus Ware from the Cowboys. I think Emmanuel Sanders was he on that roster?
I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of things. It kind of reminded me of the Rams from last year.
Yeah.
You know, they put all their eggs in that 1 year basket.
Got that Super Bowl.
They got the Super Bowl, and now you've seen the fallout, and they're kind of following. The Rams are following along.
Absolutely, they are.
That same script that they are, but you know, the Rams got their once. The Denver Broncos, that was their third. So you just wonder, is there hope for the future? I think there's hope for the future because that fan base deserves a winner.
They do. They
really do.
I don't know about that.
The money thing, and to your point about an owner willing to spend, that doesn't matter in the NFL. What? Tell me you're going to spend if this was a baseball conversation, absolutely.
Yeah.
But everybody spends in the NFL. You have to spend to a certain point, and you can only spend so high. So it's. Tell me you can spend.
All right. So how about this? Before I get to two 49ers-ish questions, then a lot of talk about who will be the next head coach in Denver. Pump the brakes or not, Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton will both be back in the NFL next year.
That's not pump the brakes. I think they both will. I think there's enough bad coaching out there that there's going to be a few owners that feel like they need guys that have been retreads and that have had success in recent history with an NFL organization. And you talk about 2012, does that count as recent history, you know, as far as Jim Harbaugh getting to the Super Bowl and with Sean Payton 2010? Was that, or 2009? Was that recent enough for, you know, to be considered a guy that has had recent success in the NFL? I don't know, but I just think those are names that are going to be dropped out there. There's plenty of great young coordinators. You still have the same list that you had last year of guys that got screwed over, that didn't get a real good look. I mean, Eric Bieniemy is still out there, still looking for a job. I mean, there's a lot of great assistant coaches, but again, it's going to be tough. But I think those two guys will definitely fill two of those spots.
Sean Payton can't be on the Broncos list because he technically is still a Saint and would have somebody's got to give up compensation, and they want a number one at least. And guess what? Denver does not have.
That's going to Seattle.
It's going to Seattle.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
because they had talked about the Rams. I don't know if they're going to have an opening or not, but Rams couldn't hire him either. Then, if that's the case,
couldn't. Yeah, they want compensation.
I can't see Sean McVay going somewhere.
No,
else.
People are talking about him being in the television booth, but not yet. Not yet.
But I think to your point about what lies ahead for the Rams, because it's
salary cap hell,
and no relief with young players.
Anytime soon.
You can't get young players. Look, I'm not pumping the brakes either.
So you think Harbaugh will be back in the NFL?
No, I'm not saying I think he could. I mean, I wouldn't bet against it at this point.
That's the question.
You know better.
No walking the fence. Harbaugh
pump
and
the brakes,
Payton.
then.
Okay,
that's
right,
two of them. Because you have real issues around both of them. Do you give up a number one for Sean Payton? I don't know.
Depends on the roster.
I would,
and give him total control.
Control.
He's going
to want total control.
So if I'm Michael Bidwell, I do that because he needs news. He needs positive news. If I'm Michael Bidwell, I do that.
But he's going to be snobby. Is he going to really look at Arizona and say, do I really want to deal with Kyler Murray, a diva?
He's good at short quarterbacks. He's got it.
You know who would rejuvenate the fan base if they were smart enough to – because you're going to have to embrace this quarterback, right? Eric Bieniemy. Because of what Andy Reid's offense has done with Patrick Mahomes. And stop it. I know what you're thinking. I'm not saying Kyler Murray's Patrick Mahomes. But he's got a lot of arm talent. He can be a solid quarterback for you. And that offense, if they bring it over from Kansas City, is an exciting offense. There's nobody more creative. Shanahan and Andy Reid, man, those two are the most creative offensive playbooks in the NFL.
Yeah, but
I think it'd be an exciting hire.
Yeah, but the thing that makes that offense exciting,
Patrick
players in those uniforms.
Kelsey and everybody. Exactly right.
The other question I have about Jim Harbaugh, and look, he's a Michigan guy, right? So I'm not bashing the Michigan guy, but he was 44-19-1 at the 49ers, and they said, you know what? Because Jim Harbaugh didn't end up at Michigan.
3 NFC championship games,
right,
and a Super Bowl.
And then they decided to part ways.
After an 8-8 season.
Yeah. 8-8 season. But he was 44-19-1 at San Francisco. And you've heard the stories before. You heard it at Stanford a little bit. Like, Jim Harbaugh marches to the beat of his own drummer.
Yeah. He wears out as well.
And you would say he marches to the beat of his own drum. Even as a Michigan fan
I love Jim Harbaugh.
But you hear, some of the things that you hear around him.
I think he's great.
And you see the interview. Like, local TV did an interview of Jim Harbaugh in his office, and he was talking about all the stuff in his office. Like, nothing controversial. And you're looking at this guy going, man, he is one weird dude.
He is. And the quirkiness is partially why I think he's awesome.
But 44-19-1.
Just a football guy, man.
You can't argue.
No.
44-19. You can't argue with it, but the 49ers decided – yeah, we can do better than this guy at this.
See, but they didn't though. It was the butting of heads in the front office that got in their own damn way.
That's my point. That's what Jim Harbaugh does to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like if you read the stories in the Detroit media with his interactions with the athletic director, and you made a good point. When you're messing with my money, I'm going to get pissed off too.
Yeah.
But he marches to the beat of his own drummer, and when he feels he's right about something, he is not going to move off that position. 44-19-1, and the 49ers said, we think that you're good to go. Go back to your alma mater. Because he did not end up at Michigan of his own choosing. They put him there.
Yeah.
So why didn't Minnesota hire him last year? Because last year was as good as this year if you're talking about hiring Jim Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. He went to the college football playoffs and lost. So nothing changed this year.
You're saying Harbaugh will not be in the national football?
No. I'm saying that he
Well, you're giving us all these reasons why you don't think teams should hire him.
I said, did I pump the brakes tonight? I don't
did.
remember now. I'm just talking now to hear myself talk. I love Jim Harbaugh, but if I'm an NFL owner, I don't know if I need to deal with that.
Yeah. All right, I got two 49ers-ish. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No,
you're good.
You're good.
Two 49ers-ish pump the brakes questions here. One of them, around the Cardinals this weekend they're playing. Deebo Samuel. He's officially off the injury report as of today, is expected to make his return against the Cardinals. But pump the brakes or not, the 49ers are beating the Cardinals with or without him. I sit him this week.
Oh, yeah, I'm not pumping the brakes. I would sit him too.
There's no reason to rush him back.
There's no need. They really don't change their playoff positioning by playing this game. I understand you want to get him.
They can get the number one seed. They need the Eagles to lose to the Giants.
They're not.
Which they're
because
not.
the Giants aren't playing
Nothing
anybody.
to play for. Yep. And then they got to beat the Cardinals. But I think even if you were, Brandon Ayuk's been outstanding the last month.
And, I mean, you think about the other weapons. I mean, he's not the clear-cut alpha on that roster.
Yeah, McCaffrey's been outstanding. Ayuk's been outstanding. And really the alpha is the entire defensive unit, too.
Yes.
But Kittle, on the offensive side, too.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So a couple things. I don't play him either.
Yeah.
Do not play him. But you look at the injury report, Christian McCaffrey out, a couple other offensive players out, whether or not they're ready to go on Sunday or not, because you can make the same argument for all these guys.
Yep.
You need them to beat the Cardinals. You don't need anybody to beat the Cardinals if you got that defense. Brandon Ayuk has been playing well.
Been outstanding.
Got called out this week because what's his name said he's not playing up to his potential.
Kyle Shanahan
had called out Brandon Ayuk.
Wow.
You've been outstanding.
Kyle Shanahan not satisfied with Brandon Ayuk. So put him out there. Let him earn his coach's love and affection again while you let your let your star rest up.
Real quick, another one. Reports are saying Jimmy G will likely be ready to return by the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. But pump the brakes or not, if the 49ers get to that point with Brock, you roll with Brock.
Absolutely. You're not taking him out of that lineup. You had him banned at the beginning of the season. 3 months ago, you didn't think he was worthy to even practice.
That's your field over there. You go over there.
He wasn't even worthy to practice with you. And then
they didn't give a
bring him
playbook.
Back. No playbook. No, you take your ball, you go over there and play by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 months later, you're going to bring him back and hitch your hopes and aspirations to a guy that hasn't played in 3 months or 2 months? I don't think so.
No, 100%. He'd go hang out, watch a game with Derek Carr. Seriously.
Oh, that's a little pump on the brakes. A little too soon there, my friend. All right, so a little pop culture. I want you to tell me whether or not this is understandable. You can see how this gentleman got himself in this predicament.
Right.
According to a police report, 55-year-old man pulled off to the side of the road. We've all been here, especially you've been doing a lot of road trips, Grose. Pulls off to the side of the road, middle of the night, has to use the restroom. His wife was sleeping in the back seat. She decided while he was out there, you know what, I got to go too. The man comes back to his car, still thinks she's sleeping in the back seat. My man drove 100 miles before realizing she wasn't there. This is all according to the police report.
No.
This woman didn't have her phone or money because it was in the car she was sleeping in.
Wow.
She hoofed it 13 miles before finding a police station who were able to call this guy and say, we've got your wife 100 miles behind you. Pump the brakes or not, you could see how that could happen.
Oh, no, pump the brakes. Can you say it's going to be a cold winter
Oh, my God.
for this gentleman?
Oh, my
He
God.
might not see the bedroom until 2024.
Yes.
I mean, wow. How do you not know your wife is not
She's
in
not
the
there.
back?
She's not there. She was sleeping. He got out of the car. She was still asleep.
How big of a car is it? That's what I want to know.
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Because
that's the make or break question in this story, I think, in terms of whether or not this is acceptable.
no, it's not acceptable
large is
either
the cab?
way. It's not.
Is it a Kia Soul?
Yeah.
Gotta go.
Right. Yeah.
That's awful.
It is.
100 miles?
He thought he drove nearly 100 miles, and she had to walk 13 miles, according to the police report, to get from the rest stop to the police station.
Don't even speak to me until March.
You gotta go.
Don't even speak to me
He
till
did
March.
have to go, Gross. That's what got him in this situation.
That too.
Yeah.
I didn't know where that story was going.
Don't speak to, she's literally going to give him the silent treatment until St. Patrick's Day. And let's see how lucky you get there.
Deservingly so.
You got it. No.
So you don't see how this could happen. You're going to pump the brakes. You don't see how that could happen.
How's that happen?
Awful.
Well, I told you. She was sleeping in the back seat. He got out to use the restroom before he.
How do you not hear the
she
door
got
slam?
out.
Something.
Right.
Like where are you going to relieve yourself? Like you going like a
Like
mile
rest,
one way, a mile
no,
that way?
like a rest stop. So you go in.
Oh, I
in
thought they were like
a rest stop. So you go in. You're in the men's room.
I got you.
While you're in the men's room, you thought she was sleeping in the back seat. She gets out and goes in the women's room. Now you go back to the car.
No.
Fire it up.
No.
Put the tunes
100
on.
miles, you've asked
Boom.
something.
You would
Hey,
Even
dear.
if she's sleeping,
Yes.
middle of the night.
100 miles? You know how long it takes to drive 100 miles?
Yeah, let's see, like 80 miles an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes.
Takes you less time than me though, because I know you drive fast.
Oh, I'm hitting.
He moves.
Especially
He
in
moves.
Texas, I can get it. You can go 85 in Texas, brother. I'm gone. 100 miles, I might get that in 45.
See, now all of a sudden it's starting to become understandable.
But still, 45 minutes, that's a long time to have a conversation with yourself.
Right.
You haven't, you going, hey, babe.
That's true. That's true. And that's why the size of the car comes into play. Because if this was like a van where there's a bed back there,
No.
or something.
No, you're not getting off
Still?
the hook for that.
No.
Right.
No, it's
All right.
awful.
I thought it was kind of funny, at least.
It is funny, but it's bad for him, though.
You check in. Hey, you all right back there? Everything
Yeah.
good? You gotta go. I'm stopping. You gotta go.
Right. That is true. When you pull over somewhere like that, usually
Like if
you're
it was an official
hey,
rest area, I wasn't sure that it was official. Like
Yeah.
I thought my man just pulled over on the side of the road,
took
and
a pee behind a bush and then got
somewhere.
out.
Yeah.
No, it was a rest stop. So he goes in, she goes in.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
I got to stop at the rest stop. You got to
Right.
go because I don't want to stop this car again in B-Train's case in 45 minutes.
All right. So even though we did 3 segments, we're pushing like 2-hour podcast here, so we got to get to it. So it's time for B-Train's dad joke of the week here. All right. Always delivers us a dad joke to wrap things up. There is a grading system to the dad joke if you're joining us for the first time. No matter what, he's going to get one of these. Now, if it is a funny dad joke, you're going to hear the laughter. If it's above and beyond gross, you're going to get the standing ovation. However, there is that chance that the joke just doesn't quite land, and the grading system gives him one of these. Grose, by the way, chooses the button. I just push it. All right, so here we go.
Stand up. Stand up and be
Stop
counted.
it.
Stand up and be
Stop
counted,
it.
Sean Crespin.
B-Trade. Have at it.
Here we go. What do you call a lonely cheese?
Lonely cheese.
A provolone.
Oh, Grose gave me the eye.
Oh, stop it.
Grose wanted that one.
Stop it.
He gave me
that
the eye.
was good. Provolone, come on. Come on.
Do you get it?
Mike,
Alone.
stop
I
it.
get I don't push the buttons.
You
You
get
tell
it
me to stop it.
Stop
Provolone.
it.
It's
Alone,
provolone.
like
Yeah, I know.
alone. Yeah.
I got it.
That's why I gave it the laughter. You gave me. We got you on tape, by the way, too. You're on camera.
Come on.
He gave me a side look
Stop
like this.
it.
All right.
You gave me 2. That's despicable.
I didn't give you 2. I just gave him.
No, you gave me the clap, then you gave me the want.
I gave you the clap. I mean, hang on a second. That sounds off. I gave you the laughter.
Give yourself the want for that one.
Welcome to the part of podcast where you learn more about Sean and B-Train than you ever wanted to know.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, my
Hold
God.
up.
Yeah, hold up. Wait.
I thought it was funny.
It was funny.
I thought it was funny. Grose apparently didn't.
It was funny.
Somebody gives you the clap. What are you going to do?
Wow.
Hold up.
You're going to be alone.
Wait.
Okay,
my
that's how we
God.
end this one. First podcast of 2023.
Especially my favorite number, 92. I mean, come on. That's how you do it.
Thanks for sharing, Sean Crespin.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for episode 92 of Train and Gross. We'll see you next time.
We'll holla.